Have you ever realized that most human suffering does not always come from what actually happens in life, but from what we think before, during, and after those events occur? Imagine two people facing the same situation, losing a job opportunity, experiencing rejection, or failing in a business attempt. Objectively, the events are identical, yet one person recovers quickly, learns from the experience, and tries again, while the other sinks deeper into despair. The difference is not in the external world, but in how their minds interpret reality. This is the power and danger of negative thinking, a mental pattern that appears simple but has a deeply profound impact on human life. Negative thinking is not just occasional pessimism or worry. It is a repeated mental pattern, a thinking habit that slowly shapes how a person sees themselves, others, and the future. When this pattern is left unchecked, it does not only affect mood, but also changes decision-making, behavior, and ultimately the reality a person experiences. Modern psychology shows that the human mind does not merely reflect reality. It actively shapes how reality is experienced. In other words, what you repeatedly think does not stay in your head. It influences your actions, and your actions create real outcomes in your life. One of the most dangerous aspects of negative thinking is that it works silently beneath conscious awareness. Many people do not realize they have negative thinking patterns because these thoughts feel like truth. For example, someone who frequently fails may begin to believe they're simply not capable. Someone who is often rejected may begin to believe they are unworthy of love or respect. These thoughts do not arrive as loud or clear voices, but as subtle whispers that repeat every time a difficult situation arises. Over time, those whispers become beliefs, and those beliefs become identity. Psychology calls this phenomenon cognitive distortion, which refers to biased ways of thinking that cause a person to perceive reality inaccurately. People with negative thinking patterns tend to magnify small failures into proof that their entire life is failing, or generalize one bad experience into a conclusion about everything. For example, if someone fails one job interview, they may immediately conclude that they will never get a good job. From a rational perspective, this conclusion is illogical, but emotionally it feels very real. This is the mental trap that keeps many people stuck in cycles of failure they unknowingly create themselves. To understand how powerful negative thinking is, we need to understand how the brain works. The brain is designed for survival, not happiness. Naturally, it pays more attention to threats than opportunities. This is known as negativity bias, the tendency of the brain to focus more on negative information than positive ones. In ancient times, this was useful for survival. However, in modern life, this bias often becomes exaggerated. One negative comment can erase 10 compliments. One failure can feel larger than multiple successes. As a result, a person can have many good things in life, yet still feel dissatisfied because their mind focuses more on what is wrong. The problem becomes more serious when negative thinking begins to influence behavior. When someone constantly believes something will fail, they tend to avoid giving their best effort or even avoid taking action altogether. This creates a phenomenon known as a self-fulfilling prophecy, where a prediction becomes reality because of the belief itself. For instance, someone who believes they will fail a presentation may become overly anxious, prepare poorly, and ultimately fail. Afterward, the failure is seen as proof that their belief was correct, reinforcing the same cycle. Without realizing it, negative thinking does not just describe reality, it creates it. In daily life, we often see how negative thinking affects human relationships. Someone who constantly distrusts their partner, for example, may begin interpreting small actions as signs of betrayal, even without real evidence. Because their mind is already filled with fear, they become defensive, accusatory, or emotionally distant. This can damage a relationship that was originally healthy. Eventually, the relationship truly becomes unstable, not because of the initial situation, but because of a thinking pattern that continuously created tension. Negative thinking also has a strong impact on mental and physical health. Psychological studies show that constant stress and worry can increase cortisol levels in the body, which over time affects sleep quality, immune function, and even heart health. This means what you repeatedly think does not only affect your emotions, but also your biological condition. Unmanaged negative thinking can turn into a chronic stress cycle that becomes difficult to break. However, the most dangerous part of negative thinking is not the pain it creates, but the illusion that it is reality. Many people do not realize that thoughts are interpretations, not facts. They treat every thought as absolute truth. If the mind says, "I am not capable," they believe it without questioning. If the mind says the future will not change, they accept it as destiny. In reality, thoughts are narratives formed from past experiences, not guaranteed predictions of the future. Modern psychology and neuroscience show that the human brain has an incredible ability to change, known as neuroplasticity. This means thought patterns are not permanent. Every time a person repeats a thought, they strengthen neural pathways in the brain. If the pattern is negative, the brain becomes more likely to generate negative thoughts in the future. However, the good news is that this process can be reversed. Through awareness, reflection, and intentional thinking shifts, people can reshape how their brain functions. Thoughts that were once automatic can be retrained into more neutral or even positive ones. This change does not happen overnight. It requires awareness and consistent practice. The first step is noticing when negative thoughts appear. Many people live in autopilot mode and never truly observe their thinking. By becoming aware of thoughts, a person creates distance between themselves and their mind. They begin to realize they are not the thoughts themselves, but the observer of those thoughts. This simple awareness is the beginning of mental freedom. The next step is questioning the validity of those thoughts. Is this thought actually true, or just an assumption? Is there real evidence, or only fear from the past? By questioning thoughts, a person weakens the power of negative thinking. Thoughts that are no longer automatically accepted gradually lose their influence. At the same time, a person can begin replacing old patterns with more realistic and constructive perspectives. Real-life examples can be seen in many people who successfully changed their lives. They did not eliminate all negative thoughts, but they learned not to be controlled by them. A successful entrepreneur may still feel fear of failure, but does not let that fear stop action. An athlete may still experience doubt, but continues training and competing. The difference is not the absence of negative thinking, but the response to it. In the end, negative thinking is not an enemy to be completely destroyed, but a signal to be understood. It shows where fear and mental limitations exist. However, if left unconscious, it can become a force that limits an entire life. A life controlled by negative thinking is a life dominated by fear of a future that has not yet happened. In contrast, a conscious life is one where a person understands that thoughts are tools, not rulers. If there is one important lesson from all of this, it is that your mind does not always tell you the truth about the world, but it always reflects what you repeatedly train within it. If you repeatedly train fear, fear becomes dominant. If you train courage, courage grows. If you train awareness, you begin to see thoughts for what they are, just thoughts. And at that moment, you begin to regain control of your life, not from the outside world, but from within yourself.